Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Agnanatimirandasya Gnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarini. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधरा शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna. So today we are discussing from chapter 2 verse 12. Natvevaham jatunasam natvam neme janadipah na chaiva na bhavishyamah sarve vayam ataparam. Neither was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So Krishna, from this particular verse, he is now starting Atma Gnana, giving knowledge about self. So he's saying that all of us are eternal individual persons. And we have been there in the past, we are there in the present, we will continue to be there in the future. So this is a very technical verse, so I'm going to go through the purport pretty much line by line, because otherwise it's very difficult to understand this. So in the first paragraph, so there is reference from Kathopanishad, as well as Shvetashvatara Upanishad, that Supreme Personality of Godhead is the maintainer of innumerable living entities. Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman Tam Atmastam Ye Anupashyanti Dhiras Tesham Shanti Shashwati Netaresam. So different living entities are taking different types of body based on their individual work and reaction of work, which is karma phala. So based on karma and karma phala, every entity takes up different situations, different body, different family, different species, etc., etc. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead is also present in the heart of the living entity along with the jiva. Now only saintly persons who can see the same Supreme Lord outside and inside can actually attain perfect and eternal peace. Tesham Shanti Shashwati. Tesham Shanti Shashwati. So eternal peace. Netaresam. Nobody else can achieve. Who can achieve? Who can actually see the Supreme Lord within and without all living entities. So here Prabhupada is saying the same Vedic truth given to Arjuna is given to all persons in the world who pose themselves as very learned, but actually have but a poor fund of knowledge. So who don't have really any proper knowledge, but they are posing as learned. So many people today, they talk about knowledge and they talk about guiding people. But here Prabhupada is saying that it is the same knowledge. They also have to know the same knowledge, that they are souls, that they're part and parcel of Krishna. They have to understand the same knowledge, and they have to understand that there is Supreme Soul, Super Soul, that he is in control. So Lord says clearly that he himself, Arjuna, and all the kings who are assembled on the battlefield are eternally individual beings, and that the Lord is eternally the maintainer of individual living entities. In the Sharanagati, we talk about Goptritve Varnam Tata. So he is the maintainer, and he maintains not just conditioned living entities, even the liberated beings. So he is the maintainer of everybody. We have to recognize this fact. So everybody is an individual, eternal person. So this person, Prabhupada, in all his purports, right, he's so much emphasizing, fighting this Mayavad philosophy. Why? Because Krishna is a person. And this consciousness that Krishna is a person is what will actually help us progress on this path of bhakti. Many times, actually, even the Archa Vigraha in the temple, we forget that the Lord is there. He's a person and he's there, residing there. It's an incarnation. Many times we end up keeping our back to the Lord, speaking some prajalpa within the temple, without recognizing that the Lord is actually present there. So Lord is a person, just like, somebody, if some very important guest is there and somebody showing their back, it's not considered respectful, and it's definitely not, nobody does that to somebody whom they love. They won't treat them like that. So this Lord is a person that we have to recognize as devotees. For Mayavadis, of course, it's at a, that they have to recognize that the Lord is a person. But for devotees also, we have to recognize that the Lord is a person. We shouldn't forget that. So, and this individuality existed in the past, continues to exist now, and will continue to exist in the future. So, there is no cause for lamentation for anyone. Why? Because when we say anyone, it actually is referring to the Atma, which is eternal. Only whatever is getting destroyed is the body. So, we don't have to lament for the soul, but we end up lamenting for the body because we are so deeply associated with this material conception of life. The Mayavadi theory that after liberation, the individual soul separated by the covering of Maya will merge into the personal Brahman and lose its individual existence is not supported herein by the Lord, who is the supreme authority. Because he is saying that there is no merging business, because merging means that one loses their individuality. But here Krishna is saying, no, we are all eternally individual. So this means that there is no question of merging. Right? As individuals, the dependent individual should serve the supreme individual, who's the Lord. And Lord Krishna is the supreme authority, and he is denying this theory of the Mayavadis. Nor is the theory that we only think of individuality in the conditioned state supporting. So these are different kinds of arguments that Mayavadis put across, saying that this individuality is only when comes into picture only when somebody is conditioned. But Krishna is talking about himself. No, he is not conditioned. So that means that he's not talking about any kind of individuality which applies only in the conditioned state. Individuality exists both in the conditioned state and in the liberated state. Because even in liberated state, when one goes to Goloka, he serves as an individual being. The statement of Krishna is authoritative because Krishna cannot be subject to illusion. So Krishna is saying, no, all of them are individuals. So he cannot be subject to illusion because he is above all illusion. And Prabhupada is arguing here, if individuality were not a fact, then Krishna would not have stressed it so much. He's stressing it. Natvevam jatunasam. He's starting Atmagnana by stating this. So he wouldn't have stressed it so much if it was not a fact. That means that Krishna is not a liar. So he will not say something which is not a fact. Right? The Mayavadi may argue that the individuality spoken of by Krishna is not spiritual but material. Like we said, in conditioned state, only associated to the body. All of us are individuals, but Atma, we are all one. We just in illusion that we are thinking we are different, but we merge. No. Even accepting the argument that the individuality is material, then how can one distinguish Krishna's individuality? Okay, so Prabhupada is putting an argument. So assume, say you consider that this individuality is material, but then how do we understand Krishna's individuality? Because Krishna is not material and he's still talking about his individuality. That means that individuality is not restricted only to material, it is also exists in the spiritual. Krishna affirms his individuality in the past and confirms his individuality in the future also. Krishna has maintained spiritual identity, individuality all along. So that cannot be accepted. Now next argument. If he is accepted as an ordinary conditioned soul in individual consciousness, then his Bhagavad Gita has no value as authoritative scripture, because that we know. Because from Pramad, Vipralipsa, Karnapata, so 4 defects of human beings. So then Bhagavad Gita loses its authoritative position. So which means that we cannot accept that Krishna is an ordinary person. So he refutes that argument also. Now there is a third argument. The Maya argues that the plurality mentioned in this verse is conventional and it refers to the body. So like plurality here is that all of us, all of these kings, a plurality. But this plurality is not not conventional, which means that it's not referring only to the body, but it's referring to the soul. So Prabhupada is arguing, previous to this verse, such a bodily conception is already condemned because Krishna is chastising. Asochan anvasocastum pragnavadamscha bhashase gatasu nagatasumscha nanusochanti pandita. So he's saying, why are you lamenting on the bodily platform? Now, if he has already refuted it in the previous verse, why will he now again emphasize it on the bodily conception? So that means that plurality is not on the bodily conception. It is also on the spiritual conception. Therefore, individuality is maintained on spiritual grounds and is thus confirmed. So Prabhupada is putting so many arguments here. He's refuting all the Mayavadis' arguments to say that soul is one. Aham Brahmasmi. Soul is supreme. So here, and it is confirmed by great acharyas like Sri Ramanuja and Ramanuja and others. It is clearly mentioned in many places in the Gita that this spiritual individuality is understood by those who are devotees of the Lord. Only the devotees can understand. Those who are envious of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead have no bona fide access to the great literature. The non-devotee's approach to the teachings of Gita is something like that of a bee licking on the bottle of honey. One cannot have a taste of honey unless one opens the bottle. Similarly, the mysticism of Bhagavad Gita, it is mystic, it is a secret. That is why Krishna is saying, Bhaktosi me sakha cheti rasyam. And it can be understood only by devotees. No one else can taste it. Nor can the Gita be touched by persons who envy the very existence of Lord. How can they understand? Because then they will consider Krishna himself as an ordinary person, and then how can they understand what he's saying? Lord Chaitanya has forbidden us to read commentations made by Mayavadis and warns that one who takes to such an understanding of Mayavadi philosophy loses all power to understand the real mystery of the Gita. Unfortunately, there are so many speakers on the internet who speak so nicely about Gita, about Bhagavatam, and poor hearers, they are not able to distinguish whom to hear from whom not to. Here Chaitanya Prabhupada is clearly saying, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, don't hear from Mayavadis. That means that whenever we hear any discourse on spirituality from anybody, first we have to understand who is the guru of that particular speaker. And if somebody says, I am self-made guru, that means reject that person immediately. And if in case that person is come in some kind of a Mayavad Sampradaya, then also we should not hear, even if that person is the best speaker in the world, doesn't matter, should not be heard. So because one will lose all power to understand the real mystery, because it is a mystery. Bhagavad Gita is not in English, is not in Devanagari, it is in the language of bhakti. So only a bhakta can understand. So since Srila Prabhupada has given us the purports, we are able to understand these verses. Otherwise, we can be completely in the wrong on the wrong path. And Prabhupada is also making one more technical statement. If individuality refers to the empirical universe, then there is no need of teaching by the Lord. The plurality of the individual soul and the Lord is an eternal fact, and it is confirmed by the Vedas as above mentioned. If individually refers to empirical universe, that means that empirical means everything has to be through experiment. Then why there has to be any teaching? So people can go on experimenting. So that is also ridiculous. So multiple ways he's refuted this whole Mayavad, and this is the beginning of Atmagnan. Like I said, for devotees, we have to always remember that Krishna is a person. He's a beautiful person who's very dear to his devotees. And with that consciousness, we should serve him and progress towards his spiritual abode. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveta Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna.